Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our presentation today of our Racial Justice Speakers Series. My name is Kelly Weiss. I'm the Executive Director of Marketing and Communications. I'm just gonna lay out a few house rules before we get started. So everyone will be on mute throughout the talk today. After Ms. Olson is done presenting, we will take questions. Those will come through the chat and just send them directly to me and I can ask the questions and then we'll get answers and go through that Q&A. And now I will introduce Dean Johnson.
Thanks, Kelly, and thank you all for being here. This is part of our series, our Racial Justice Speaker Series. And we're very lucky today to have Tracie Olson, the Yolo County Public Defender, with us. Tracie joined the Yolo County Public Defender's Office in 1998 after graduating from the University of Minnesota Law School. She's handled every type of criminal case, including capital murder. In 2009, she was appointed Chief Public Defender, the first woman in the history of Yolo County to hold the position. Since then, she's concentrated on building a law firm that provides clients the highest quality legal representation, excuse me, through a model of interdisciplinary representation, including a record mitigation clinic, a social worker unit, a racial justice committee, an early representation protocol, a media team, a wellness program, and an immigration unit. Tracie also continues to handle a caseload. She's a board member of the California Public Defenders Association. Please help me welcome Tracie Olson. She'll talk today on racial disparities in Yolo County, the effects of systemic racism. Thanks for being here and welcome, Tracie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. All right. Do you want me to, I'll share screen and get started. All right. Can you see the PowerPoint now? All right. So yes, I'm here to talk today about racial disparities in Yolo County and the effects of systemic racism. Increasingly, the world's demanding that action to eliminate prolonged racial injustices occur. How is really the question. And first and foremost, it's accepting that there is a problem. Overcoming denial seems like it should be easy and seems like it should be straightforward, but it's actually a predominant problem that needs to be addressed before we can ever accept responsibility. And after we accept responsibility, that's when we can identify and implement solutions. So first I want to talk a little bit about denial. There is an excellent article by Ibram Kendi called Denial is the Heartbeat of America. And it's been in the Atlantic. If you Google it, it'll come up. It's, like I said, it's excellent. It's very on point. It's very, it's worth a read. So what he says and what he pointed to in the event that happened just recently on January 6th of 2021 with the insurrection at the Capitol, there was some very famous photos that came out of that. The photo here is one of them. It's a white gentleman with a Confederate flag. And the reaction from people was mixed, but you saw some themes. And then President-elect Joe Biden said, the scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America. Representative Brenda Lawrence said, this is not the America I know and love. Representative Nancy Mace said, this is not who we are. So a lot of rejection of what we saw with our own eyes on January 6th of 2021. But I would like to challenge those statements because isn't it really our true America? I mean, if you go back, the burning of Black Wall Street in 1921, that was America. Isn't this exactly the America that we do know? The white backlash to school desegregation in the 1950s, that's America. And the civil rights movement in 1960. Again, it's exactly who we have been. But denial erases accountability. So people do not like to be uncomfortable. We do not like to see ourselves as responsible for ongoing inequities and ongoing violence against Black and brown people. Reactions almost invariably tend to be defensive when racism is brought up. People tend to reflect and deny, and when that happens, it's never adequately addressed. In that article that I referenced, Ibram Kendi said, "I've been arguing that the heartbeat of racism is denial. There is the regular structural denial that racial inequality is caused by racist policy. And whenever an American engages in a racist act and someone points it out, the response is usually, 'I'm not a racist.' The response is not normally, 'Yes, I was being a racist and I'm going to try to be an anti-racist.' The response is, 'I am not a racist.' And that's why racist acts never stop." And racism is a local problem, okay? It's not because Yolo County is an outlier. It's because I think racism is a problem in every county in this state of California, in every state in the nation, and frankly, in every country in the world. So here's an example. On June 10th of 2020, it was a day of solidarity. So every public defender's office throughout the country gathered in support and to show some solidarity to the Black Lives Movement. What we did locally, this is Freeman Park across from the courthouse. That's me with a megaphone, and that's a lot of people from my office in the community holding signs. And it was meant strictly to be a day of solidarity, to show that we were united in the cause. And then, as you can imagine, it caused some news reporters to reach out and want to discuss in more detail why we were out there. And so I discussed with the news reporters things like what I saw, inequitable treatment in the courts, inequitable sentencing, some issues with policing. But I also pointed out that on April 10th of 2020, our jail population at the time was almost 200 people. So that's not our capacity, that's the amount of people that were in our local jail. And the actual amount was 194. I have the list that I got directly from the Sheriff's Department. So 194 people were in our jail. Of those 194 on April 10th, 49 were Black. Our Yolo County population is 3% Black. Our Yolo County jail population on that day was 25% Black. It's a fact, it is what it is. If you have a calculator, you can figure out the same exact percentages that I just did. And that's an 800% overrepresentation. I said that publicly. And I got a response that I had exaggerated the claim that Yolo County's jail was 800% overrepresentation. I was told that that was an exaggeration. I was told that my spurious comments attempting to paint Yolo as a bastion of racism. Someone said, "I don't know what propelled Ms. Olson to launch her baseless critique of justice in Yolo County, especially when emotions are so raw in the aftermath of George Floyd, but that I was wrong." And now more than ever, someone said, "We need the public we serve to have faith and reliance on the fair and racially neutral administration of justice." I was told it's time to either put up or apologize. And I needed to direct my apology to the police, to prosecutors, and the judges that I've recklessly and unfairly maligned. Okay, that was the response. And thankfully, the community response was loud and immediate, not uniform, obviously. Some people agreed with what was said about what I said. But our county board of supervisors asked for data. And they asked for data because they wanted to have some objective proof as to what I was saying and whether or not Yolo County indeed had a problem. So on July 21st of 2020, now mind you, the Day of Solidarity was June 10th, so a little over a month later, there was a board presentation. And people presented from all the different departments that make up our county, including Health and Human Services, Probation, Sheriff, District Attorney's Office. And these are some of the slides that came from that board presentation, which is public, and you can look them up and see all these slides. But I start with the demographics of Yolo County. Yolo County is 3% Black, 46% white, 32% Hispanic, and this is as of July of 2019. So that'll be important later. 3% Black and 32% Hispanic or Latino. Health and Human Services presented this slide, and this is about child welfare. And just so we're clear, number of children in care, what that reflects is the number of children when child welfare believes that parents are not providing a safe environment for children, either through abuse or neglect. They can take action, they can intervene. Children in care were the children that were taken out of homes and put in foster care, which could include relative care, could include care with strangers. If you look at 2019, of the children in care, and to the right, it tells you the kids by demographics. So 3% of our Yolo County population is Black, 2.5% of our population are children who are Black, just for reference. In 2019, 93 of the 405 kids in care were Black. That is 23%. Okay, 23% of children, when you compare it to the demographic, that's over a 900% over-representation in 2019. Same with Hispanic children is actually about 45%. It's pretty close to what the demographic is. White children are underrepresented. 117 of 405 is about 29%. So white kids are underrepresented. And again, this is a slide and data directly from Health and Human Services Agency. I didn't come up with this data myself. To figure out how that looks when you compare Yolo County to the state, Health and Human Services came up with this slide. And you can see, for instance, first entries into foster care in California. In 2019, the green bar is for Black children. 10.2 Black children per 1,000 were put into foster care in California. In Yolo County, it was 42 per 1,000 were put into foster care. Clearly, there are some red flags because this is outcome data. This is, my light just went off. This is data that show disparate impact. If you look at the homeless population, again, our homeless population total is 14% African-American, okay? Our residents are 3%, our homeless population's 14%, disparate impact. Jail bookings, this came from the Sheriff's Department. If you look at the green section, those are bookings of Black people that were arrested. And let me explain what a booking means. Booking is someone that's been arrested and taken to the jail. They could be arrested for a felony, they could be arrested for a misdemeanor. They're taken to the jail, they're either detained in the jail, and then they have the choice to post bail if they can afford to, or come to court and the court can make decisions about whether or not they're released on their own recognizance. Or the jail can release them on what's called a notice to appear, which is basically, if you think it's a piece of paper that says you promised to come back to court at a future date. Most misdemeanants are booked into the jail and then given a notice to appear. They're not normally kept in the jail. So our bookings were 14% Black. Again, compare that to our 3% demographic. But compare that to the 25% that I told you, at least on April 10th, was 25% Black. That means that we're disproportionately holding people that are arrested and booked into the jail. We're just still disproportionately holding Black clients because the number goes up. The District Attorney's Office presented this slide. They said that 16% of the cases in 2019 that they charged were by race. Now, there's going to be a lot of factors that go into charging, part of which is who gets arrested, okay? The district attorney is not normally out there arresting people. And so one of the things that we have pledged to look at, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, is policing practices as well. But the district attorney acknowledges that about 16% of those that are charged and brought into the system are Black, 34% are Hispanic, and 39% white. This is district attorney's information about declination by race. What happens is when people are arrested, the police will send over a police report to the district attorney's office because the district attorney then has to read those police reports and determine for themselves in an independent review whether or not they believe charges can be brought. They do reject charges sometimes. They may say that there's not enough information, they want more investigation, or they just may say this isn't a crime, or they think that they just can't prove it with the information that's presented to them. But you can see that at least in 2019, the lowest declines were by the race for Black. And that doesn't necessarily mean anything abhorrent's going on, but it's a red flag, it's something to look at. Probation. So the active adult supervision cases, you can see disproportionality between the population and those that are being supervised that are Black. Keep in mind that when people are put on probation, if they're not living in our county, either they weren't when the crime occurred or they weren't by the time supervision occurred, they can be transferred, that supervision case can be transferred back to their county of origin. So if they can confirm address in the other jurisdiction, but you can still see disparities of those that probation is supervising versus who lives in this county. Here's juvenile detention. You could see that those that were booked into the jail, Black is 16%, whites 19%, Hispanic 63%. Large overrepresentation of Hispanic children booked into the jail. And then the other two are just agency. You can see that of the law enforcement cities, Davis, West Sacramento, and police, you can see who is responsible for some of those bookings. I think it's worth pointing out that Davis is 5%. And that's under Chief Pytel. Davis has a very robust diversion program. They have for a long time. The other cities were trying to catch up and the counties helping with that. But Davis has had a really robust diversion program, which you can see the results. 5% of all the juvenile bookings came out of Davis. And then the active juvenile caseload, again, shows actively they're supervising 12% Black, 67% Hispanic, 17% white. Again, an overrepresentation of Hispanic kids. And then you can see Medi-Cal, but mostly city of residence, where these kids are coming from, where they live. So after receiving all of that information, in addition to other slides like I mentioned, you can find on the public website, in July of 2020, our Yolo County Board of Supervisors made a declaration that racism is a public health crisis. The entire content of that declaration also is public and can be found on the county website. But one of their findings, one of the things that they relied upon when they decided to declare racism as a public health crisis, is that Black and Latinx residents of Yolo County are disproportionately impacted by the criminal justice system. And they committed to a course of action that recognizes and addresses racism and its attendant inequities in a manner that will endeavor to erase the pernicious and destructive damage of racism by ensuring meaningful progress in improving, for the good of all residents, inequalities in physical and mental health, education, employment, public safety, the judicial system, and housing. There are a lot of counties in this, in Yolo, that are working on this. Or, excuse me, a lot of departments that are working on this. It's not just the judicial system, but it's Health and Human Services, and it's all of the other agencies, including those that are not necessarily governmental, community-based organizations that are helping us look at our disparate outcomes and figure out why we have those. Internally, my office has a racial justice committee. It was actually formed in late 2019. It wasn't a reaction of George Floyd in May of 2020, but certainly we've probably doubled down on some efforts in the last year. What we intend to do is look internally as well as externally. I think that this series had Professor Joe a month or so ago present on the responsibility of public defenders to make sure we're not part of the problem. We've actually had Professor Joe come and do a presentation to us directly as well in the last month or so. But I think it's something we all need to do. We need to look internally as well as externally. And when I say internally, for instance, I know that my staffing does not properly reflect the demographics of my clients. I'm not interested in representing the demographics of the county, but my clients. Because when my clients come into the system and they don't see anyone that looks like them, that is a problem. And let's face it, I've been the public defender since 2009. I've had 12 years to fix that problem and I have not done it yet. So internally, I have a problem. We're also looking at attending training, collecting information. There's a Racial Justice Act that passed, and so we have to develop some litigation strategies to effectuate those laws. Laws are no good if they're not effectuated. And forming partnerships to make sure that we're all kind of rowing that boat in the same direction. So that's something that my office is doing. Other offices are doing things as well. So whether it's Health and Human Services, probation, everyone is been tasked by our Board of Supervisors. Plus, it's just the humane thing to do. It's what our jobs are if we're going to be good department heads, is to look internally. But I wanted to highlight a couple things that are collaborative efforts. Our county has hired a consultant to look at diversity and inclusion within our county. It's going to include employee surveys. It's going to include trainings, focus groups, listening sessions. But the other thing, and the thing that I'm more directly involved in, I'm involved in everything, but where my heart is the Criminal Justice Action Plan Racial Justice Work Group. We have tasked ourselves with identifying the causes of those racial disparities. There can be no doubt, there can be no denial that we have a problem. There can be denial about who's responsible for that problem. And that's when I talked about accepting responsibility. But we also have to work on identifying solutions and implementing those solutions. So our plan is to build a pilot program, is to connect all the other pieces, because like I said, this is never one entity's issue, one department's issue. It's a systemic issue. And then trying to find where those decision points are and analyzing what we're doing when we have discretion. Accepting responsibility by necessity, I think I already mentioned, loops back to overcoming denial and really analyzing what role we all play in this. We have to decide if we're willing to change. We need to look at policing, which is city policing as well as county sheriff's department policing. We need to see if we are looking at some communities more harshly than others, if our reaction to the same conduct that occurs in some communities is having a different response. We need to look at our risk assessment tools. There are risk needs assessments that are validated and supposed to use all this information that's empirical and give you some opinions as to who's risk to our community and who is not. I can tell you for sure, and probation has already recognized this, some of those risk assessments are biased. And it's something that's built into it. And the reason they're biased is, for instance, you can get points, and points are bad in this situation, if you were young when you have first had significant contact with law enforcement. If policing is an issue, then those risk assessment tools perpetuate the issue of over-policing and disproportionate contact by police, because we then call these kids and young adults more risky when they're just the same as everybody else, but they've had different contacts. I know the district attorneys implemented a blind charging practices. I think they're going to have to figure out if that has been effective. I mean, what problem are they trying to solve? And whether or not it should be blind. Personally, I had some questions about whether or not ignoring the fact that history, prior convictions, prior prison sentences is the right thing to do. Perhaps the right thing to do is to acknowledge that those things have occurred at a disproportionate rate and discount those in their charging practices. Restore is our juvenile diversion program. It has actually been in effect for over a year, and it is aimed directly and specifically at trying to restore balance in the juvenile system. You saw very clearly that we have an overrepresentation of Hispanic kids in our juvenile system. This is designed to take kids, not necessarily first offenders, but kids that have been in the system perhaps before, send them into a restorative justice model with a community-based organization, and assisting them to be successful without marking them as wards of the court or under supervision of probation. And then child welfare practices, you could see very clearly that those need some evaluation, some review, because we're disproportionately taking Black and brown children, but Black children mostly, away from parents. And then, are we willing to spend the money to make a difference? We can identify the issues, we can implement or come up with solutions, but sometimes it all takes money. So really, are we willing to have equitable housing resources? Are we willing to support employment? Are we willing to ensure transportation so people that are referred to programs that can help them, they can get there? And housing is always a primary issue. It's not just in Yolo County, it's in a lot of places. And we got to figure out a solution to that, and it will take money. And again, that criminal justice work group that I spoke about, one of the things that has been suggested, and I think we're heading in that direction, but we will see, is whether or not we're willing to take a hard look at why we have a disproportionate number of Black persons in our jail. So I gave you the data in April. It was a 25% disparity, or 800% overrepresentation with a 25% population. On December 16th, 2020, so a few months later, 8 months later, on that day, we had 220 people in our jail, 222, 47 of whom were Black. Again, that's 21%. It's just math. I have the list. It's not in dispute. And it's an overrepresentation again. So why is that? And more importantly, how can we fix it? And hopefully that is a project that we will take on. I get the value of research, and I get the value of collecting data, and I understand all that. I just don't want the next year or so to only be collecting data. I want to start fixing some problems. And the group that has broad representation, it's probation and the district attorney's office. I think it's the sheriff's department, if I recall correctly. I think it's Health and Human Services. We're all in semi-agreement that this is going to be our project, but we will see in our next meeting. And then conclusion is just how can you help, whether you're a member of the community, whether I saw a bunch of people from some departments in this county, and of course the school, is name and denial, right? It's one thing to talk about all the good things you're doing to address racism, but it's another to pretend like you're not part of the problem. So name denial, if you hear it. Demand accountability. We are stewards of criminal justice and other things here in Yolo County. If we're not changing the outcomes, if we see outcomes we don't like and we're not changing them, we are accountable for that. So demand accountability. Share expertise. The university is filled with wonderful students and faculty and ideas, and we need all of that. We really do. We need program evaluators. We need students willing to implement some grants. We need, like I said, ideas and passion and everything you have to offer. We're very lucky in Yolo County to have a university, and I think that strengthening those relationships will inure to the benefit of everyone that lives here or works here. And then organize, that the goldfish, when they all get together, they're bigger than the shark. And the shark is not as scary. So those are my recommendations. At the end, it's some contact information. I welcome anyone that wants to contact me. You can do it by email. You can call me. My extension is 8167. That's the main number. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. We have both a personal account for me and a public defender account, but reach out and let me know your thoughts. And if you disagree with me, totally fine. If you agree with me, that's fine too. And we need to work together to see how we're going to fix this problem that is clearly a problem in our county, just like every other one. And that's it.
Are you taking questions yet?
I think the moderator is going to take questions from chat.
Yes, we're gonna take questions through the chat, and just give me a second for them to come through. Hold on one second. So I have a question from DJ who writes, have comparisons been made between people of color in custody versus Caucasian people with similar criminal history, charges, etc.? And also, what is the effect of bail versus OR release. Not, hopefully you know that OR, yeah.
Sure. Start with that one. The second part's easier. Bail is when you can pay money to get out of jail. Simply put, that's what it is. So if you have money, you can post bail. If you don't have money, you can't post bail. And it has a disproportionate impact on poor people. Whether or not, so then you have to then look at the demographics of who's considered poor in our county and decide if there's the disparate impact on people of color. And typically you see that correlation. Own recognizance means someone comes to court and the judge decides to let people out of custody without having to post any money. It can be under supervision of probation. So probation can be charged with overseeing what they're doing in the community. It's not probation, but it has the same effect as probation because there's supervision involved. And they can be released with conditions. It could be go to behavioral health treatment. It could be go see your doctor for psychiatric medication and take those medications. Always is come back to court and it's always obey all laws. That's a judicial decision by the judge, right? So what happens is the first court appearance is usually when these decisions are made. My office is there, district attorney's there, and probation's there. And when there's requests for release, the court gets input from all those entities. A lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times probation will have done a risk assessment, and then that information is also before the judge, and then the judge determines whether or not to release. The primary factors that go into that are, do I think you're going to come back to court, and do I think that you're going to get in trouble when you're not, when I release you? Those are the primary factors that are considered. If that didn't answer your question, let me know. But that's what bail and OR means. As far as looking at white people with the same exact criminality and Black people with the same exact criminality, anecdotally, sure, we do that on a regular basis. As far as a study, no. But I like to start these premises that nobody's more violent than anybody else as far as race. There's no race that's more violent. There's no, they're people. And so what we need to do is look at different people's situations. But I don't know if the question's aimed at suggesting that Black people are more violent and therefore that's the cause of our disproportionality.
Okay, great. We have a question here from Cecilia, who says, do you anticipate the Board of Supervisors will provide more funding to your office to get answers to these questions? If not, would it help for us to write letters encouraging them to fund your research so we can get answers and make changes?
No, I'm not going to get any money for this, but it's not really my research. It's a county effort. The things that I'm doing in my office are mine. You know, trying to make sure that my office is diverse enough to represent my clients fairly in a way that they want. That's my problem, and I have a solution to that. I found some funding for that. But as far as looking at the problems of the county, it's going to require everybody to step up, and writing letters probably at this point on that issue. I don't know if that's going to make the difference. I appreciate the offer, but I think really what it is our group probably needs, instead of money, we need to figure out what the problems are. And then once that's identified, it's the money to solve those problems. So I guess in that sense, it's not a letter campaign necessarily. Let me think about that some more, because we do need money, but it's more about having the county either allocate general fund dollars. You know, you've heard defund the police, and let me make clear when I say that, because people are going to freak out. I do not mean we don't need police officers. We do. Okay, we need police officers because they have a protective role in our society, and we're never gonna live in a society that probably doesn't need a protective role. However, I don't think police officers, especially when they signed up to be police officers, I don't think anyone decided to be a police officer and went to the academy and then got their first job thinking that they would be scooping up people from the sidewalk that had overdosed or were close to it. I don't think that they envisioned themselves doing crisis intervention in families' homes when there was a mental health break. So there could be a reallocation of money for experts to address situations that require specialty experts. But again, that's the will of the community is probably going to be important on that. Yeah, so maybe, yeah, we can, whoever asked that, you can contact me directly and we can talk about that some more.
Thanks. I wanted to mention you brought up the police, and Dean Johnson is actually on the task force looking at the public safety function for the UC Davis police. And he was wondering if you have any suggestions for this task force and kind of looking at the role of the UC Davis police and public safety.
I think it's most important to get the people that are specially trained and experts in the appropriate situations. So if you have someone that is having a mental health crisis, you need to have an expert in mental health present. So I think streamline or aligning the duties and the expectations with the need is the number one thing that I think a task force should be looking at. And then, and a lot of that could be analyzing what are the type of calls. And sometimes a mental health call requires a police officer because there's danger involved. And maybe a mental health clinician wouldn't want to show up without a police officer. But in jurisdictions that have actually used this model, it's been few and far between where police officers were called by the mental health clinicians to go out because they needed them. So I think it's really the task force is aligning the need of the community with the experts that can deliver the service and making sure those two things meet at the outset.
Dean Johnson, is there anything you wanted to follow up, or does that kind of cover it?
Oh, that sounds very helpful. It's hard though sometimes to make the alignment work because you're not exactly sure what kind of help you need. I mean, like you say, in mental health situations, there may be safety risks. Domestic violence situations, there surely may be safety risks. So matching and aligning the people who respond and ensuring their safety as well as everybody else's safety can be challenging at times, it seems.
Yes, but I also have clients that escalate when they see a police officer appear because of their history or their thoughts or whatever it might be. So it's not as simple as having a police officer show up with an expert and then having the police officer stand in the background and let the expert do their work. That might work in some situations. It's not going to work in every situation. And then you've got two people responding and twice the cost of a response that may not be necessary. There are some models out there that have been successful. And I'm willing to talk about those and give you, I'm sure you know about most of them, but if not, I'm willing to share that information. And I know that locally, police officers have asked for crisis intervention teams. That was something that the county had offered local police. They liked it, they appreciated it. And then for funding reasons, and I think a little bit of underuse, it went away, but they've requested it to come back and it is coming back. I'm just not myself a proponent of sending law enforcement on every one of these calls. And it is going to depend. Domestic violence is complicated. Very complicated, probably more so than some of the other types of cases. But it kills me every time I have a relative who don't know who to call. So they call 911 and then the 911 response appears. And then my clients end up getting arrested for resisting arrest. I mean, that's what they get arrested for. Not because necessarily it was an assault that occurred before the police happened, but it's just the situation got out of control. If we could eliminate those, I would be happy.
We have a question from Mark who writes, I was struck by the reactivity of the quotes you shared in response to your initial data. Have the tone of key law enforcement agencies toward you and the data changed in more recent months?
I'm going to say yes, because I'm optimistic. I think it's changed in some respects. I think it depends who you talk to. I think there are representatives from every agency that are fabulous to work with. And they'll absolutely say, yes, there's a problem. Let's work together and let's work to fix it. Every single person from every single agency is not like that. Yeah, I would agree with that statement. Amazingly, the best responses I got after I said what I said publicly were from city law enforcement. The best responses I got were from chiefs of police. So.
Okay. We actually have a comment here from a police officer, I guess former police officer, Anthony, who says, I was a police officer for 1 year and left for the reasons you mentioned. I found myself arresting the same homeless people for the same violations on multiple occasions. I wish someone from the public defender's office would have been available to me when I was a cadet at the academy. Do you have any plans, or maybe they're already in place, to conduct such outreach while our officers are training?
I'd be absolutely willing to do that. Haven't yet, but I would. I know that our local Woodland Police Department has a homeless action team. And when Wayfair or Walter's house, the homeless shelter before it moved, which was very recently, is right across the street from my house, or my office. I'm here a lot. We had a lot of homeless people that hung out in our parking lot, and that was before the fence went up, and again before the homeless shelter moved. And we, go to my car, and I recognize so many people, and I'd say hi. And so we told local law enforcement through Woodland Police, hey, if you have a problem with somebody, because in one of your regulars, contact us, and we'll go out there and talk to them, because we either already know them or we're going to know them, so might as well start the relationship. But mostly, we don't have a badge, we don't have a gun, we're not there to take them to jail, we're not there to do anything, and we have social workers, and we could assist them. So that was a partnership that we formed a while ago that has had some benefits. With probation, probation's now in the old courthouse, so they're across the street from us. Same with them. We share clients. We're right next door to each other, and we do share resources like that. But no, I haven't reached out to the academies. I'd be willing to do that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Kevin says the district attorney has a neighborhood court diversion model based in restorative justice principles. Do you know if any research has been done on the racial breakdown of defendants referred to the neighborhood court? In other words, is there the same racial breakdown on which racial groups get referred to neighborhood court?
I don't know. That is not the first time that question's been posed. The district attorney's office might have that information, but I personally don't know what it is as I sit here right now. I don't think it'd be hard for them to gather that information, but that's key, because we're also, we want to look to make sure that it's being offered equitably. But that program's been around for a while. It first started in Davis with some low-level offenses. It moved to West Sacramento. It was we call the homeless neighborhood court, so totally different population. It is now expanded to some felonies. They got a grant to allow them to expand, and all grants have data collection requirements. So it's something we could easily ask them and see what their data looks like.
Mm-hmm. A question from Farah is, could you speak more about the numbers regarding the Latinx youth in the criminal justice system? What role does the Yolo County public school system play in this context?
Well, when you mention school, that brings up resource officers in my mind. I'm not here to tell you that resource officers embedded in the schools are the reason that we have an over-reliance or a disproportionate number of Hispanic kids in our system, because I don't know that to be true right now. But I do know that there's a lot of research that having resource officers in schools leads to can lead, not always, but can lead to a police response sometimes. So there's that connection. But I also know that our superintendent here, our current one and our past one, has been very, very tuned in to these issues and have made a lot of inroads into stopping that from their end. I'm pretty pleased with the partnership that we have with the local schools. But our outcomes are still a lot of Hispanic kids are in our system. And I don't know if that's because they're labeled gang members and looked at differently. I don't know if that's because where they live and it's over policed. I don't know if they're all coming out of the same cluster of school experience. That these are the things that we need to find out. The Restore program very clearly saw that we had an over reliance on the criminal justice system when it came to Hispanic kids. And we're working to improve that. We just had the first set of data came out. We're getting into the weeds as to exactly who was eligible to be referred and who was actually referred. And that will go to a program evaluator pretty quickly. And then that information, I think, is going to be shared publicly. But yeah, those are all questions exactly why that we need to know.
A question from Professor Frampton is how the YCRC, Restorative Justice Program, is impacting your clients. And maybe you can, if you're familiar with it, share what that acronym means.
Yeah, I think it's the Yolo.
Oh, not to say if you don't know the acronym,
Yeah,
particularly what it is.
Yeah, sure. It's Restorative Justice, and Kara Hunter is the executive director. And so it's all our Restore kids, our juvenile diversion program, all those kids get sent to YCRC. And they sit with these kids and they find out what they're accused of, what their conduct is. They talk to them about taking responsibility and how to rectify that on either their direct victims, if it's a vandalism, if it's a theft, if it's something like that, if it was a problem within the family. So rectifying the harms that they've caused with their direct victims, and also just the harms that they've caused to their family, the harms that they've caused, even if they're not direct victims, to their futures, to themselves. So that they have a key role in the juvenile diversion program, and they also have a key role. I believe it's still neighborhood court. I think that neighborhood court's the first one to tap into that restorative justice program in our community, and make it a standard for diversion here. And we also have restorative justice in our day reporting center. Our day reporting center is located out by the jail. It is funded by the Community Correction Partnership after criminal justice realignment occurred. And that's where our high risk adults all go for one-stop treatment. So whatever their needs are, all their needs are supposed to be met at one location. And there is a restorative justice component out there as well. So they've actually done a lot of work in our community and continue to do that with both adults and juveniles.
Great. And I was able to find that's the Yolo Conflict Resolution Center.
There we go.
That sounds right. Okay, great. A question from Corey asking about implicit bias training, and specifically, has the Public Defender's Office and or the District Attorney's Office implemented implicit racial bias training into your annual programs for training?
Yeah, yes, both offices have. Both offices are MCLE approved continuing legal education providers. So when we offer this in-house, it qualifies for state bar requirements. State bar requires some implicit bias, not a lot, but some before every 3 years when you re-up your, or you have to show that you've complied with their mandates. But we go above and beyond that, and I think the District Attorney's Office does too. We offer multiple hours a year, and it's not only implicit bias so that we can look inward and make sure that what our actions are not being influenced, but it's also just recognizing how to address these things in court. For instance, when you're selecting a jury, there's some information studies out there that say that if you just talk about it with prospective jurors, just bringing it up and bringing it to their attention, forces them to evaluate the decisions they come to while being on a jury, to make sure it's as free from bias as they can make it. But bringing those topics up and making them evaluate themselves makes a difference. So yes, we participate in implicit bias training on a lot of different levels and have for a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And another thing that's been found to raise awareness around race and disparities, something that Dean Johnson has mentioned, is diversity that we see in our offices. Mm-hmm. How many attorneys who work in the Yolo PD's office are what you would say diverse? What are the demographics of the attorneys, if you have that information?
I actually have all that information, but it's going to take me a second to get it. We have 24 attorneys. I have it broken down by gender, and I have it broken down by race. So we have 24 attorneys, 5 investigators, 3 social workers, 2 paralegals, 7 support staff. 27% of our 41 identify other than white. So 17% of the 24 attorneys identify as other than white. 22% of the supervisors and managers, so the management structure, identify other than white. 22% of our 41 full-time employees speak a language other than English. That includes Spanish, Punjabi, and Russian. And 59% of our 41 identify are women. 46% of our 24 attorneys identify as women, and 67, so 2/3 of our management structure is women. Great.
Well, that's a good deal of data there you had on hand, so that's wonderful. That's great. Thank you. We have a message from Kelly, who says, I'm an undergraduate advisor in the sociology department on campus. We have plenty of undergraduate students passionate about criminal justice reform. How can they get involved with your office?
Okay, so we host interns regularly. For law student interns, we'll go on campus and do the interviews, and we don't, for everyone else, contact me and either I'll respond or I'll refer you to our intern coordinator, and we can talk about it. You would come in, it's kind of hard during COVID now. We had, especially in the summertime, 10, 12, 15 students from all different disciplines in our office at any given time working on issues. Sometimes you'll help social workers interview clients and prepare mitigation information for sharing in the system. Sometimes the law students will go to court, et cetera. But contact my office and then tell me what you want to do. And if it's something that means that you're here on a regular basis and just absorbing what we do, that can be accommodated. If you have a particular project in mind, let me know. And I have particular projects in mind, and we can talk about those things. But yeah, we are also going to be starting a paid internship program. Very small, not a ton of money, but one of the things I really wanted to focus on, my office tends to hire interns. So when we have an opening, whether it's for an attorney or something else, we tend to hire interns because they've been on a 1-year or 2-year or longer job interview, and they're trained, we've trained them. But because we've never paid interns in the past, we're reducing the number of people that we're actually going to be hiring. We're reducing diversity. We're only certain number of kids can work for free. I mean, it's just a reality. So we were inadvertently, but we were excluding kids that couldn't work for free, really, if you think about it, from long-term employment with us. So we're trying to rectify that. I found some money through a grant, not county money, to rectify that. It's going to probably take effect in the next couple of months. So we even have those sort of opportunities, but it doesn't mean I can pay everyone, but we're working on that. Right now, the model, like I said, is volunteer. And if your school lets you have credit, we'll work with your school on that.
Okay, great. A question from Bachitar, who says, I'm curious as to why Yolo County has been so responsive as compared to other counties in California. And I guess we can leave that up to you if it has been responsive or not as responsive. Where does Yolo County sit compared to our other counties in the state?
I don't think we're any worse than, or and not much better than a lot of the counties. I mean, I think what's unique about Yolo, and I think it's important to point out, because of our size, and because of our county is so diverse as well, but mostly because of our size, we are able to collaborate and make decisions and implement things quicker than some of the bigger counties, right? I mean, we're the little rowboat almost, and if you put your oar in the water and want to go left or right, you will go left or right fairly quickly. LA, San Diego, Orange, they're on this cruise ship. And when they want to turn, it takes a lot longer for them to turn. So I do think that in that respect, we are ahead of the game. I think we have some partners that have done some very progressive things. I mean, credit where credit's due. I think that there have been some things that have been innovative. But we still have all that data I showed you. That's still us. It's still us. And, we're not a bastion of racism, but we have racism and we need to fix it. But I think that's true of every county in the state, every state in the country. Like I said before, I think I don't think anyone's immune from it. And I think the quicker we can accept that and move on and look at ourselves and know that we're all part of the problem, every one of us is part of the problem. If we can accept that, we can move a lot quicker.
Great. Well, thank you for all of your responses. We are running out of time here, and thanks for the great questions from our audience. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all of them, but I appreciate the interest in this talk.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Tracie Olson. Thank you all for being here. Take care.